What's up today, Dallas Cowboys fans, Cowboy Nation? It is a big week for the Dallas Cowboys, a big weekend, I'll say. A game tomorrow again against the Detroit Lions. This is going to be a perfect opportunity for the Dallas Cowboys to just get themselves on track, because now you're facing a 3-game losing streak potentially. And I know nobody in this organization wants to let that happen, because again, we're talking about the postseason is right around the corner. You're now starting to see teams starting to shape themselves into what could potentially be what they're looking like, their final forms going into the postseason. And the Dallas Cowboys the last couple weeks have been very disappointing, because again, as a fan base, obviously, we're very focused on this team just locking in and showing that they really have some potential. Again, from the offensively, on the offensive end, obviously Dak Prescott has had a great season, 3,800 yards, 30 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions, a couple touchdowns on the ground as well. And obviously, over the last couple months, this offense has pretty much turned into a Dak Prescott just show, a display for him to, again, obviously just, I guess you want to say it in the simplest way, is being able to just show that this is his offense. We're now actually in the point where you're going to look at now Dan Quinn is starting to have a lot of questions, because again, what we're starting to see is just a lot of these inconsistencies I spoke about in the last, just a review of the Miami Dolphins game versus the Cowboys. Dan Quinn is starting to get too cute, in my personal opinion. Obviously, you're starting to have some injuries, and when you're looking at the situation, obviously losing a guy like Leighton Vander Esch, who is just a solid piece in that linebacker room, and then bringing on a guy like Rashaan Evans, who, again, formerly of the Tennessee Titans, again, a guy that I guess was going to be looked at as a guy that kind of be somewhat of a replacement for a Leighton Vander Esch. Now we see, a guy Rashaan Evans I spoke about is no longer with this team again. I believe essentially it was an issue. Don't know if it was a marijuana issue, whatever it is, but the team was just not looking to keep him on the roster, and that is not really helping us for the simple fact that the Dallas Cowboys are lacking when it comes to linebacker depth. We've seen many guys being moved around. We're talking about, obviously, you have your Marquise Bales, you have your guys like your Donovan Wilson's, Jaron Kearse. I mean, again, they're similar to guys that are kind of playing that hybrid role for the Dallas Cowboys, a linebacker safety position, and more playing a lot, especially more when it comes to a guy like Jaron Kearse. They're going to see a lot of him in this Miami Dolphins game. If you go back and watch, he plays a little bit of middle linebacker in some of these formations, it seems, and that is completely not going to be the recipe for, I guess you want to say, a formula for success of Dallas Cowboys going forward, because one thing you're starting to see is teams are taking advantage of us in the run game, and the Detroit Lions are not going to be one of those teams that goes against that as well, because as much as they want to throw the ball with the Jared Goff, you have an Amon-Ra St. Brown, some of these guys that can make some plays, obviously in the passing game for them. They're still sitting at 11-4 right now, and winning the NFC North for the first time in a long time. And when I say long time, I mean a long time. So obviously the Detroit Lions themselves, Dan Campbell has them locked in, a former Cowboy. Dan Campbell has the Detroit Lions just playing physical and playing tough football, and he's kind of taking on that mentality of that city, obviously. So if you're going to have to be able to show some success, this is going to be a perfect opportunity against a good team. Now, again, obviously a team that we do know is a locked in NFC North Division champion, and going to be potentially fighting for one of those top 2 seeds in the NFC as it's starting to shape out right now. So the Dallas Cowboys have a few things that they want to kind of get under their belt in this game. Then the Detroit Lions are going to be perfect competition for these certain circumstances. Another small little thing to keep an eye out on this in this specific game, CeeDee Lamb having a spectacular season. Obviously, I believe about 106 catches, 1,424 yards, 9 receiving touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb has the perfect opportunity this week to top Michael Irvin's single season record. And I'm going to say, if he has a crazy yardage type game, he can honestly break the receiving yards record for a single season for the Dallas Cowboys franchise history, and also the reception record. Michael Irvin sitting at with 111 catches, and I believe 1,600 yards, a little bit more than 1,600 yards, 1,603 to be exact. CeeDee Lamb can top both of those and again cement himself as one of these Dallas Cowboys premier receivers. We do know when you put on that 88, you're going to have big expectations from a Drew Pearson to a Michael Irvin to a Dez Bryant to a CeeDee Lamb. You're going to have high expectations, and these are not guys that are good. We're talking about guys that are very confident in themselves, and CeeDee Lamb is just another long line of those. And again, I believe this is going to be a perfect opportunity of playing against a team like the Detroit Lions, who I'm going to personally believe, in my opinion, they're going to play lots of man this week. We do know the last couple last couple of games, we're talking about the Miami Dolphins and also the Buffalo Bills prior to that, they play lots of zone. And to me, that's one of those things that kind of gets the Cowboys offense in trouble when you're not actually hitting on your P's, taking your P's and Q's again. We're talking about you have to be very precise when it comes to decision making when you're playing against zones, because the windows are much smaller and you don't have one guy specifically trying to cover any one specific player. So you're going to sometimes have to be very careful with tip passes and things like that, which is why I believe when you're playing against zone, you have to be very quick with your decision making, like I said, but also use that to your benefit. That's when you get the playmakers the ball, your playmakers, as much as you can. That's why I like to see guys. So if you're able to see in this game, the Detroit Lions try to take a little bit out of what they saw from the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins, do not be surprised. If that happens, I want to see us get the ball in Tony Pollard's hands a little bit more in the quick game. Brandon Cooks is a perfect guy for this offense if that's what you're trying to do, because if that's the case, we already know Brandon Cooks has shown many times this season, once the offense actually began to open up a bit, you see that he still has that deep play, downfield ability, but also he's just quick with his feet, so you're going to be able to use him in these small holes. We know CeeDee Lamb gets used around a lot in the slot, from the slot position, so you're going to always be able to have your weapons in certain situations. It's all about up to Mike McCarthy, excuse me. I say it's all up to Mike McCarthy to just be very decisive and not play around, because again, we know after those scripted plays go away in the first couple drives, excuse me, that's where sometimes you'll start to see a little bit uneasiness and unsteadiness, I guess we'll say, not what we've become accustomed to over the last month and a half. Again, prior to these last two games, we saw again just a very decisive Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott, being on the same page as him. So they just have to get back to that. It's stop overthinking the offense. To me, at the end of the day, we're not going to be a run team because we're not built for that. The offensive line has been in disarray, some injuries, some guys just not playing well. Again, I've spoken about a Terrence Steele has not had a good season under any stretch of the imagination, in my opinion. And last week, obviously, you're not playing with a Tyron Smith, and you're having to throw in a Chuma Edoga out there, left tackle. He did not look good at all. So this week, I believe Matt Waletzko is brought up now. And again, this coaching staff especially obviously has some confidence in a Matt Waletzko. We'll see if he somehow plays himself into any playing time. It's up in the air right now. Tyron Smith plays. I believe he did not practice again, but it's still up in the air because, again, Tyron Smith is one of those, I guess you want to say, wily veterans. He has the mentality to go in there and just do what he's asked to do. We need just everyone to get back on the same page when it comes to this offensive line. Tyler Smith, I've spoken about, has had a solid season, in my opinion, one of the better ones, performances along the offensive line this season. Zach Martin, again, we're still trying to get him back into shape. And again, in good, healthy shape, because, again, obviously heading to the postseason, you're going to ask yourself, what is going to slow some of these teams down? It's going to be your offensive line, your defensive line, so the trench play, and then, again, guys just being as healthy as they can be. We do know this is a long season, so guys are going to be banged up, a little beat up, but if the Dallas Cowboys can somehow solidify that tackle position with getting a Tyron Smith just back for a postseason push, and Zach Martin getting him just as healthy as we can, we obviously know on the flip side, you're looking at a guy like Jonathan Hankins who's still missing time due to that ankle injury, and I believe he could be back soon. I'm not sure if it's going to be this week or not, but we have got to get everyone healthy when it comes to the trenches. But I'm excited to see what exactly this team is going to do. I'm not going to lie right now and say my confidence hasn't dropped in this team a little bit, because it definitely has. And to me, it should be more than realistic, because if you're watching this team, you've been a Cowboys fan for a long time, you're going to start to ask yourself, is this the same as always? You have a nice, solid regular season, and you look well at certain points of that season. But then as the season prolongs and goes on towards a playoff push, you start to see the results, and you start to see, again, just some of that discipline just wane off a little bit. And again, that's to me what has kind of happened over these last couple weeks. The Dallas Cowboys have got to just lock back in. Remember, this is a talented team. They have got to remind themselves this is a talented team, and you are exactly what your better results have. Now, what you have to do is figure out how to get back to that point. I feel like we can, but I'm not going to say right now that, again, the Dallas Cowboys don't have questions in a lot of this fan base's minds. And again, to me, it's expected, but I'm gonna say it's being very realistic at this point, I'll say. Just because, again, we do know the history of the Dallas Cowboys. The coaching up and down, to me, Dan Quinn is going to be the most important in this game I'll speak about, just because Dan Quinn, again, has got to stop getting cute when it comes to how you're employing some of these defensive weapons. Micah Parsons at no point should be a guy that we're seeing just kind of being a sitting duck anymore at this point. Because, again, at this point, you have to ask yourself, What can we do to free up Micah Parsons? We've seen many times where we're watching and he's beating guys just off the line as quickly as possible. I believe he has the highest win rate at this point in the NFL season. A guy that we do know he should be a defensive player of the year because, again, it's not all about stats. And if you're not paying attention to the games, you'll think sometimes Micah Parsons is not making these splash plays. He's forcing plays for other guys sometimes, and he's just sometimes, even if the offense is able to still make something happen out of nothing, if you're just paying attention, it's forced pursuit. Quarterbacks are having to get out of the pocket, running backs are having to change direction, and things happen like that. So Dan Quinn, is going to be his job, especially when we're starting to have some of these bang-ups, more so in the linebacker group. You're going to have to move around to Micah Parsons a little bit more, to me, in my personal opinion. You have to get him back there, kind of, I guess you want to say, in some of the ways that we saw him used in the Miami Dolphins game. Not necessarily just sitting out on the edges, being used as a Mike backer, rushing up the middle, rushing from the right side. It's all up in the air, and you have many guys to move around a little bit. So Dan Quinn is just about him, as well as Mike McCarthy, just showing that they are playoff veteran coaches, and they're ready to have this team make a real push. On the flip side, you're looking at a guy like Jared Goff, literally having a nice season himself. I believe over 3,800 yards passing. 27 touchdowns to only 10 interceptions. But to me, what starts this team, and again, going on to just, again, I talked about especially how important the trench play is going to be for the Dallas Cowboys, more so on the D-line, the front seven overall. The Detroit Lions are literally the epitome, I'm going to call, of a running team and a smash-mouth running team because they can do it in many ways. You have former Chicago Bear running back David Montgomery leads the team with 910 rushing yards, and then rookie phenom right behind him, Jahmyr Gibbs, I believe 872 rushing yards. That is going to talk about two guys almost pushing for 1,000 yards this season on the same team in the same backfield. That just shows how exactly they like to play. Obviously, they have Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy with about 106 catches or something like that, I believe. Not right around the corner, something like 106 catches. Then you're looking at, another guy with, I believe, also over 1,200 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns also receiving for Amon-Ra St. Brown. But to me, the Dallas Cowboys are going to have to make them one-dimensional. I still, at this point, although Jared Goff is having a nice season for the Lions, I still want to make them a passing team if you're going to actually look for success in this game. And to me, that's going to start with trying to get as much off of them to get off as much off of that run game as they can. We do know that's a much easier thing said than done because they will solidify themselves on the offensive line. That's what the Detroit Lions and Dan Campbell especially love to just do. They want to show themselves and dominate as early as they can in the I guess you want to say in the trenches. So again, look for a guy like David Montgomery to pretty much get touches early and often. I'm going to say early touches, especially Jahmyr Gibbs, more so also in the receiving game a little bit. So we're going to have to show if we're locked in. I'm going to say again right now, when you're looking at exactly some names to maybe step up, this is going to be the perfect week. Again, we're going to look at Mazi Smith getting some more playing time. And it's going around right now. Apparently, Mazi Smith has dropped to about below 300 pounds in weight. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the fact that they're trying to just get him, I guess, a little bit quicker off the ball or anything like that. But it's starting to, again, I'm starting to ask questions just because our run defense itself, we need some big bodies. We're looking at some of the guys we do have. You have an Osa Odigizua. He's pretty talented at what he does, but we don't have any of those people eaters that we're looking for. Mazi Smith has not played, I guess you want to say up to the point that some people hoped he would. I wouldn't even say expect, because I always kind of looked at him as still one of those guys that can be worked in, not necessarily going to be a star in year one, but we haven't really gotten any results that I guess can push forward to show that he is going to be one of those just space eaters in year one. Let's be clear. He's still a work in progress. It's all about development, but the Dallas Cowboys are going to have to come in ready, because I feel like this is one of those games. And as much as I speak about the Detroit Lions rushing attack, you still have to be sure that you're not letting Jared Goff get comfortable back there, because he will be able to get some of these guys the ball. A rookie tight end. Obviously, on our side, we have a Jake Ferguson with about 61 catches, I believe over 600 yards receiving, about 5 touchdowns. The Detroit Lions also have a rookie tight end, a special player in Sean Laporte. I believe like 77 catches, something like that, sitting on the season. A guy that's shown he is a very big focal point of their offense, and that's not going to go away this week as well. So maybe you're going to look at guys like Donovan Wilson, J-Rod Curse, and show their importance if it comes to, again, being able to play. I guess you want to play a little bit more tighter coverage on the tight end, because this is going to be a perfect opportunity for the Detroit Lions to take advantage of a team in the Dallas Cowboys that are laboring a little bit. Again, looking to just avoid a 3-game losing streak, which we have not done. I don't don't think the Cowboys should be panicking at this point, but this is going to be a perfect opportunity for you to now leave this game with some positive thoughts or negative thoughts, because the Washington Commanders will be the final game of the season. We're not sure exactly how the rest of the NFC, but especially the NFC East, this division is going to play out. There's still a couple games, still a couple upsets potentially, but I'm not banking on them right now. I'm still going to say I believe the Cowboys will probably end up as your 5th seed. Let's be clear, I'm all for miracles happening though, but the Dallas Cowboys are going to have to get themselves some type of, I guess, continuity and continuation of some solid play starting in this game, because you don't have much until the playoffs. You cannot continue to make excuses. You cannot continue to say we're going to get better, we're going to fix things, because at the end of the day, the talk doesn't really matter. When it comes to players having podcasts and giving their opinions daily, whatever it is. We do know Michael Parsons is a very vocal player off of the field. We're going to now, at the end of the day, we don't want to hear any more talk. It's about showing some results and showing that you are a team that can actually do something this year. The Dallas Cowboys are going to have to face off against a guy like Aiden Hutchinson right now, leads the Detroit Lions edge rusher with 6.5 sacks. So again, just more work to be shown and to be done by this offensive line. Injuries all aside, no one wants to hear any excuses. Like I said, get the job done and show that you are a team to be reckoned with. I'm not making any bold statements. I'm not saying the Cowboys are even going to do anything crazy this year, but I still think this is a team that has potential. It's all about just putting it all together at the right time. And I feel like now we're talking about only with a couple weeks left in the regular season. You have no more time to make any excuses. Get the job done. As always, I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, keep sharing. The new year is coming up. Hopefully the Dallas Cowboys are going to bring us in the right way. I appreciate you guys once again for all the support. And as always, go Cowboys.